Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are excited to be back here, joined by Jim Ramsey, to talk more about the work he's doing here as a marriage, family, and child counselor. Excited that he's back with us, talking more about his counseling services, his Christian counseling, and of course, giving us the best advice that a lot of us need, especially in the relationship department, right? So, welcome back to the show. How are you today?
Doing pretty good. It's good to be here.
Great. And tell us a little bit about yourself and Aletheia Marriage Counseling. By the way, that is the website, Aletheia, marriagecounseling.com. Give us a little insight into who Jim Ramsey is and who are the people you love to help.
Well, I don't think I've told you before that I spent several years, around 10 years, working with John Gray, the Mars Venus guy,
Yeah.
one of his staff counselors, and traveled doing Air Force Base workshops and so forth. And I did that before getting on board with the Gottman Institute about 20 years ago. So the reason I bring that up is I think that John Gray's material on gender differences is still very, very helpful and very relevant because we do have a lot of problems based on misunderstandings. I have to say, probably the majority of those misunderstandings have to do with differences between us as husbands and wives. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit today.
Sure, absolutely. And I think you did mention that in the past. That's how I knew the name. But, we never went into full detail on it, which I know we can, we will. And we're also have some questions set up for you as well. So we'll start with those.
Good.
The main causes. What are the main causes of negative reactions between husbands and wives?
Well, I think that the main reason that we have trouble in our marriages is that we assume that our partner sees things the way we do, pretty much. We kind of think that they're like us and they should be like us. And and so we're always upset because the other person doesn't get it, or the other person doesn't act like they love me by my criteria, doesn't act like I'm important by my criteria. And of course, whoever's being critical of the other, then the other is defensive and reacts and begins sharing some things they don't like about them, and you're off to the races. So the misunderstanding thing is a big deal.
And what are some of the things in particular that, could you give us an example of someone that you've worked with and you're realizing that, I would love hearing it.
Well, for example, a man can come home from work and walk in the door, and there's chaos, there's clutter, there's all kinds of things. Mom doesn't really come out to greet him. And often, before very many minutes go by, sometimes right off the bat, she has something critical to say about her perception of him. That I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that. Why can't you help with this? Or why don't you do that? And she's totally oblivious to what he's been through at work and what his hopes and expectations were upon returning home. And so it can happen that way. On the other hand, he could come in the door and be critical. He may have thought critical thoughts, but maybe he'll express them. And then she's just all fired up because you should be organized and things should be clean. And why are the kids, running around half naked and whatever,
Sounds so typical. You're right.
And so just to start a conversation in a negative way is just really a big problem, and each of them have their side of it. Those kids are like that because of this or that or the other happened all day when he was gone, and so the key is to be tuned into each other rather than kind of observing things that annoy us and then reacting.
Got it. Well, what are some of the main causes of negative reactions? Well, I should say, I'm sorry. Why do the wives often feel like they are always the ones who have to change the relationship? Is this a female thing? Tell us what's different between females and males because, or is it because the guys just don't see it as need to change and we're always, is that something wrong with us that we're always needing to try to change things?
Nothing wrong with either one, but that's the issue. It's kind of how we see it, Women really want to talk. They want you to show attention. Walk in to the kitchen where they are and put your arm around them. Say, "Hi, hon, how you doing? How's your day been going?" Ask about them. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of men don't know that that's what you need to do. That's what women think is connecting, showing interest in them, wanting to see what's going on inside of them. But often a guy will just sit in front of the TV or just wander in and change his clothes and just kind of start playing with one of the kids. And that can hurt her feelings,
Mm-hmm.
especially if in her mind that might be a special day. Maybe she's in the process of fixing a special meal. Maybe she's hoping of something special can happen after the kids go to bed. Who knows? He's not checking.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of doing what a guy does. He just kind of sits down, reads the paper, watches the news, whatever. And those differences can be taken personally. They feel like I'm at the bottom of his list just by observing his face and observing his posture and observing him sitting with his paper. And it speaks loudly to a woman that way. But a man doesn't know that. He's
Mm-hmm.
tired. He's home, you know. And often he doesn't really feel appreciated for what he did all day. Like she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel appreciated for what she did all day. And
Wow.
so both of them are feeling like nobody gives a rip. And
Mm-hmm.
we just have to take care of the kids, I guess, and just got to keep the bills paid. But we're not meeting each other's needs.
Yeah. So in order to do that, you always talk about being open and honest, right?
Hmm.
And talking about it. But then wives also feel like their husbands never want to talk.
Well, there's one of the big differences between men and women. Some say women speak about 8,000 words a day, and man speaks
In a
about
minute, we talk
3,000.
faster.
There's different numbers, but usually they figure that he speaks about a third as many or a quarter as many as a woman does.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just less conversational, less verbal. We talk in order to solve things, fix things, talk about things, but we don't get into big conversations about what Harry said and what Mary said, the kind of conversations that women like to have. They want to have relational conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask a man when he's worked all day and to tell about it, he's the same old, same old. Because to him, he's on the oil field, he's up to his armpits in black stuff, and he doesn't really feel like talking about it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is he's doing. But she wants to know, well, what about the boss? And what about the guy who was sick yesterday? And she wants to know relational stuff. They're on
Yeah.
different wavelengths, and they don't say as much, and they don't talk about the same thing.
Well, at this time, I also want to remind everyone, AletheaMarriageCounseling.com, and also what's the phone number?
Phone number is 406-370-3515.
Perfect. And also AletheaMarriageCounseling.com. We are joined here once again by Jim Ramsey, and I love how we're going through these questions, and we're going to find out more about his training too in just a moment. So let's move on to talk about some typical differences between men and women's conversation preferences and why.
Well, I touched on it briefly, but I'd like to take a moment and just really talk about that.
Sure.
Men are much more left brain, and they have the luxury of being left brain because they can leave the right side of their head, the right brain, where all the emotions are, all the feelings are, and go over and sit and think about something, focus on something, fix something. And since men don't like to be overwhelmed with emotions, they'd rather sort something out and think something through and fix something. And so they spend more time thinking and doing than they do talking. And women, on the other hand, are multitaskers. And the
Yeah.
poor things, they're doing all kinds of stuff and they're talking at the same time and they're fixing things at the same. You know, a woman's brain operates so much more broadly. She's focusing on so many more things. She multitasks. And so if you're not on his subject, or if he doesn't want to talk about a particular subject, he doesn't talk. But she's got so many things she wants to talk about. She wants to talk about the dogs, the kid, the phone call that came in, the stuff that's spilled on the stove. She's just got full of stuff she wants to talk about. And so when he doesn't seem to be very verbal, it's easy to take it personally. He doesn't want to talk to me. He doesn't care about me. And the truth matters, he's just a guy. He's resting,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so it's important to kind of come out of where you're at naturally and understand the other person's needs and put out some effort to address that. And one of the ways to do it as a guy is to ask her questions.
Yeah.
She's happy to talk. Just ask her
Yeah.
feedback, you know?
Now, what would you say, on the other hand? It's possible to have a man that wants to talk though, right? Have you met some men that do want to talk?
Oh yeah, there's
I know
adult court
some.
with male and female, where men are more one way and the other way. You're not all like exactly the same, but generally speaking, our bodies are built differently, our brains are built differently, so we tend to have some significant differences that can lead to
Hmm.
misunderstandings.
Well, what
You know,
about the typical differences between their conversation preferences and why? Could you
oh
share that?
yeah. Well, I touched on it, but the main thing there is men want to talk about action. They want to talk about what they're doing. They want to talk about things. They want to talk about events. They want to talk about activities. Men are not much into talking about what somebody said to somebody or did to somebody or how somebody's feeling or any of the stuff that's really important to women.
Hmm.
They're just kind of into what they did at work today and what they want to do this weekend, and they really are much more into doing with their hands and fixing and building and that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have feelings. He just is not as primarily attached there. He can go there with a little encouragement. If a woman can get him to, begin asking some questions, or if he'll get her talking about feelings, then her feelings will trigger his feelings. Once a woman starts talking, then a man can start talking about that stuff too, especially if he's aware that it's important to do that.
Yeah. And what about men and women with being connected? Because, some make them feel connected in other ways. Women feel different than men connecting to their partners. So could you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, well, connection we find is just really a central feature of a good relationship. You need to feel connected. Now, what do we mean? We mean that we feel like we're known, we're loved, we're cared for. They love me, warts and all. I don't have to be special or do special things. They just love me because we're partners. We love each other. And so so the men are just kind of accepting it. And if I change my mind, I'll let you know, kind of thing. You know, but for women, they want to have affirmation. They want to have cues, nonverbal cues, like thank you for the food, or you have a pretty dress on today, or you sure look nice, or boy, is there some way we can get together tonight and do something, or showing interest. But with men, are also much more tangible, physical. They want to be physically intimate. Women want to be emotionally intimate more. They want to talk more. They want to talk about how they feel and what they've been doing, and they want to talk about things. And if a man will understand that need and be really tuned into her and listen to what she wants to talk about, then she warms and she feels closer, and then she's more receptive to being physical. But that's a big difference. Men got all this testosterone pumping through their body, and especially until they're about 40, it's a problem. They all they can think about, it seems like, to a woman. We do
Hmm.
think about other things, but from a woman's perspective, that's it. I'm the target and he's after me. But so those kinds of differences cause problems,
Yeah.
and we have to understand that they're there, and we need to compensate for them.
Got it. Well, also, let's continue to talk about maybe why most wives feel typically that their marriage relationship is at or near the bottom of their husband's list of priorities. Hmm.
Well, yeah, I think that to a woman, the basic thing are the relationships between herself and her husband and her kids, and then of course her mom and her friends. She's all about relationships, and when he seems to just kind of accept that they're there and that's it, we don't need to talk about him anymore unless there's a big problem, you know, then he's talking about the car, or he wants to work in the yard, or he wants to do something else. And she can just feel like, why don't we just sit down and visit?
Yeah.
You know, I got a horrible call from my mom today. I want to talk to you
Oh,
about. She's getting sick again, and maybe we got to go see her. You know,
yeah.
and so she would think as he walked in the door, "How's your mom doing?" You
Hmm.
know, but there were a few things came up last week, but I'm supposed to reference those, and because if you're sensitive about relational things. And so if I don't bring it up, it's like I don't give a rip. All I think about is the car or the lawnmower or whatever else I'm doing. And it's not true, but it sure looks like it's true. And it feels like it's true. And it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
A woman could be crying in the room. What are you crying about? Well, you didn't even ask me about my mom. Well, how am I supposed to what you want me to? I'm not a mind reader. Men say that all the time. I'm not a mind reader.
Yeah.
So that brings up another thing. It's important for women to ask for what they want rather than just react to what she thinks is going on. Honey, I want to talk to you about something happened today with mom. Oh, okay. But
Yeah.
but see, she can assume he doesn't care just because he doesn't bring it up. That's not true.
No, I got it. Yeah, I got it. All right. Well, hold on. Okay. What is the common reason husbands frustrate their wives by their driving? What are men doing behind the
Oh,
wheel?
well, one of the things that's really quite different between men and women is because we're kind of left brain oriented, we tend to do one thing at a time. We focus on something. And that can be a problem when you're driving. And if I'm driving the car and I'm listening to the news, depending on what's being talked about, I drive faster or slower.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm listening to a football game, I may start driving faster because I'm hyped up about what's going on in the football game. Uh, or I may go past something that I'm supposed to turn on because I'm thinking about what's being said on the radio, and I go past my turn off. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be really frustrating to a woman, kind of getting lost or getting disoriented. And well, you want me to drive? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Women are not very happy with men the way they drive because we tend to drive too fast. We're not noticing things because we're just kind of into our head or into what we're hearing, or, we're not really multitasking like we need to
Mhm.
be a good driver from a woman's perspective.
See? See?
So
I
it's not,
agree.
it can, some guys are worse than others. I'm probably as bad as it gets because I'm so tuned into what I'm listening to or what I'm looking at that I can be a problem. In fact, I think I'm multitasking. I think I'm having attention deficit disorder. But usually it's more like I'm focused on something and I'm not paying attention. And then I think I got both. I'm looking for deer and I'm looking for fish jumping in the river, and so I got attention disorder as well as a tendency to get focused on one thing and not pay attention to others. So I probably shouldn't drive cars.
That's so funny, right? I get it. I get it. I get it. But I also think, I thought men also drive slower. I think they're more careful. No, they're faster, you think?
Excuse
Guess
me?
it's different. I thought men drive slower than us. No, not the
Well,
men I know.
a man could drive slower if he's thinking about something.
True. All right.
As I'm getting older, I do drive slower because I'm just kind of thinking about stuff, and I'm going down the road at 50 or 60 miles an hour, and the people are starting to line up behind me. I remember when other old guys used to do that when I was young, but now I'm the one doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that can happen, you know.
That's so funny. All right. Well, also, let's chat a little bit about the, I guess, the gender specific needs that maybe are misunderstood and can be interpreted negatively by the spouse. Hmm.
Well, I think one of them, the biggest one probably, is sex, because see, for a man, that's how he feels really connected, not just physically, but he feels really close to. He feels really loved, and that could be interpreted for her as all he wants is my body. He's
Mm,
a sex fiend kind of thing. But what he really wants is to feel close to you, to really feel loved, to feel appreciated, to feel desirable. And when he's doing sex with you, he thinks he's really pleasing you. He's really showing you how pretty you are. In his mind, he is connecting with you emotionally. But again, women can feel like it's on your mind.
hmm
You don't notice my brain or my other things I have to offer here, and that can be hurtful. And a lot of times women become less sexually oriented because they kind of get into that thinking, and it can really be a sad thing that really shouldn't happen.
Oh my goodness. I understand that. I'm focusing on this and I believe like this is I agree. I feel women feel that the men want us for our bodies. It's so fun. It's the conversation I have all the time. But I
Mhm.
guess you're not realizing that's how they connect. We connect differently. I mean,
Yeah.
we all connect, but okay, I have to keep that one in mind. And we
Yeah.
talked about that before. Go ahead.
And of course, then you get a vicious circle because, she's not really prepared to be sexual. She's kind of in the middle of some things. She's not even thinking about it. She's not warmed up emotionally. She's not feeling emotionally close. And then when a man pushes and prods, that feels unloving. That feels like, why don't you
Annoying.
do what I need you to do for me? And that doesn't feel good.
No, it
Uh,
doesn't.
so it's a once you understand it, then you begin to realize, okay, I need to be more connected with her emotionally, and then she can feel better about me approaching her. I don't want to just walk up to her and slap her on the fanny and expect to have some kind of performance.
Yep.
Women hate to have a man kind of
Ah,
sexually touch them when they're not even in the mood.
totally. All right. Well, you kind of answered this, but you mentioned, well, how do men and women relate differently to their need for connection and how can these differences be harmonized? We kind of covered that too, but I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
elaborate on that.
Well, it again, each of us need to be kind of aware of the other difference. We're very aware of who we are and what we like and what we want. But it's very important to pay attention to nonverbals, and women are big on that. They 80% of what they're paying attention to is nonverbal. Men don't do that naturally very much. We can learn to do it. How to
Hmm.
read people, how to read mood, pay attention to body language. And the more each of us can be paying attention to what the other person is needing and feeling and read their faces and read their moods and so forth, it helps us to be appropriate when we approach on the level of either talking or being physically sexual,
Yeah. Hmm. Well, also, what would you say the main key to being successful at changing your spouse's behavior?
Okay, now that's a very important one. We tend to think that the best way to change our partner's behavior is to get after them about what we don't like.
Mm, doesn't work. It just
You know, and,
adds
and,
fuel
and
to the fire. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, uh, we need to ask for what we want rather than try to correct what we don't like.
Hmm.
We need to ask for what we want and then thank them for it and appreciate it. And then we get more of what we want. But if we get irritable and get on their case about things we don't like, it just digs a deeper hole all the time. And the person feels like I've been doing this and I've been doing that. All you want to do is criticize me. Criticism does not motivate. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Just does not motivate. Unless it's like motivate me to like you less or want to be divorced from you. I guess it might motivate you that way. But it's not going to motivate you to be happy or close.
No, I got it. You're right. Now, do you want to go back and talk a little bit about your training? You mentioned the gentleman that you trained with.
You're talking about John Gray now?
Yes.
Yes. I really enjoyed working with John Gray. He's a very sensitive guy. He's very intuitive. If you read his books, they just really read easily, and there's lots of humor, and yet you got gems that pop up every other page. There'll be some insight. You say, wow, I didn't think of that. And the other thing about John is he's not writing books for professors or for some book club. He's writing books for people. And he can write a book from beginning to end in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. He just focuses and it just flows. And doesn't worry about having a great big bibliography. He's just writing about the things that are important. He's thinking about whatever. And so he can be criticized by some of the people who are oriented toward the more intellectual, more academic approach. He is intellectual, he is academic, but I mean, he's not trying to oppress those people. He's writing about what he's thinking and what he's experiencing and what people need. And so if you haven't ever read of any of his books, he's got probably over 20 or so now. But
Wow.
the classic is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah.
And for about 25 years, that book was on the top of the reader list in America. It sold more books than any other than the Bible for over 20 years.
What? Are you serious?
No, Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus
Oh my
was a
gosh.
very, very, very popular book for a long, long time.
Oh,
So it's humorous to me because people can be snobbish.
yeah.
And and John Gottman is a fantastic research scientist and a fantastic scholar, and he's written a lot of books, and his wife is very proud of him. She would refer to John Gray as the other John. I'd say, well, yeah, I work for the other John as well,
Oh my gosh.
But boy, they both have something to offer. They're both outstanding authors and really have had an impact on relationships.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. Well, we still got 3 minutes left of the show. Jim Ramsey, did you want to add anything else about that?
Well, I think that we've talked a lot about the importance of lifestyle and realizing that our culture is working against us currently. We have to take more time. We have to have more leisure. We have to have recreation together. We have to do things with the kids. We need to have priorities that are not imposed on us by our culture or our job, if we're going to have a good marriage. At the same time, you got to make a living. So it's important to really think about your marriage and your family as a central theme and look at work that makes enough money, puts you in the right kind of community, meets a lot of needs that you as a wife and husband and kids have, rather than just something that's going to get you more money. Maybe you guys go to Alaska and work on some thermonuclear thing and an ice pack out there somewhere while she lives with Eskimos. That's not a very good idea. You might make a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
See what I'm saying? The kids won't have a good school. So I think you really need to look at the importance of your marriage and family, or you might lose them.
Yeah.
Accomplish other things, but what's the most important thing you want?
I want love, happiness, peace, and quiet, and love, love, love. Isn't that song? All we need is love. Who sang that song, right? Is it the
Uh-huh.
Beatles? Wait, Beatles or Beach Boys? Wait, who sang all we need is love? You know that song, right?
Mhm.
Who sings it?
Well, I think it makes the world go round. I think that that's
Hold on, I'm gonna
our
look it up.
relationships are the most important thing.
Hold on. All you need is love. By the
Yeah.
Beatles. All right, it's
Yeah.
John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Okay, good. I wasn't sure. Oh, it's true. All you need is love, but you also need to converse and work with your spouse, work with your partner. And it's never too early to seek out help, to start
Yeah.
talking even before marriage. You help a lot of couples before they even settle down, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's when you look at the divorce rate is 50%, and then you got a lot of people that are afraid to get married and they're just trying to live together. And then you got
Yeah.
people kind of going from one person to another, they never get married. It's a pretty big mess out there, really.
Sure is. Well,
That many people that are really rock solid, healthy marriage. Even among the ones that are married, I would say 50% are unhappy.
yeah. Mm.
So it's sad,
Well, let's keep everyone happy. Tell us how we can reach out to you for more happiness. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're a little bummed, give me a phone call. I'll talk to you.
Go ahead. What's the number?
406-370-3515.
Perfect. And the website one more time?
Aletheia Marriage Counseling.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you here. And
you.
we'll chat next week, I'm sure, again soon. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, okay?
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.